just as the University of Miami has given us access to this incredible space, which has been transformed for the purpose of our presentation, any space, our living spaces, our community spaces, make a big difference on how we feel. So there is an incredible panel assembled here to talk about this, and I'll let Tal kick it off, please. All right, thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here again. It's a bit sad, I must say, that it is the final day of this three-day journey. But these 3 days are, of course, the first step of a 1,000-mile journey. So as I've been doing for the past 2 days, this morning I went on Google to look for jokes and couldn't find anything very funny that relates to our conversation, but I found one, which is not funny, but is, I think, a good launch. So this guy comes into work, and he says, the phone, he said, I came into work today and my boss told me to have a good day. So I went home. And the reason why we connect to this joke is because there is an implicit assumption that home is a happy place. That where we live provides us happiness. And this is not always the case. When we look at the rising levels of depression, sadness, anger, hate, disconnect, what we're actually seeing, what this data implies, is that home is not providing the happiness that we assume it should, that we hope it should. And this is what this panel is about. How can we change this reality in our homes, in our communities? So this story started long time ago, January of 2018. I'm in my home and I get a phone call. The person on the other line introduces himself as Nir Shoshani, a real estate developer from Miami. And he says, Tal, you know, I looked at your website and I looked at the list of companies with whom you worked, and what I saw there was a long list, but I didn't see anyone in real estate. And he said it could be for one of two reasons. Either you worked with someone and it didn't go well and you don't want to advertise it, or we're onto something. Because I want to create a happier building. And I said, happier building, that sounds very interesting and important. And no, I think you are onto something. Let's talk. But before we talk, just so you know, I know Happier, that is the title of my first book. I don't know building. However, there is someone who's very close to me right now who knows a lot about building, a lot about design. My wife, Tommy, who's a designer. And with that, I will move over to the one who started it all, Mr. Nir Shoshani.
Hello, everybody. I'm completely out of my space here, so please be kind and considerate. But Tal's reaction, Tal, as being a prominent expert in the field of positive psychology, gave me hope that this might be something interesting. And it came within a very complicated year that I had with my children, where my firstborn, and they're all above their 20s, where my firstborn was just not happy at school, not happy with his life. And I, as a parent, was very frustrated by not being able to know more about the subject. And my second, where one of his best friends committed suicide that year at the age of 21. And within, because it's always, the happy thing is always very personal. And within that in mind, and with sort of the creation of this neighborhood that we started called the Arts and Entertainment District, I knew we had to find something that should put a happier concept along with real estate. And when Tal and Tommy came for the first time to see our operation and the building, it all just came into place. And the idea, my idea as the developer, was sort of that Tal came up with the concept of what it is to have a happier building, and Tommy would come up with the design of what it should look like. It was very important that the design would be driven from content and not the other way around, because we all know about nice-looking buildings. That wasn't the objective. The objective was to have a building which would be based on the science of happiness, and what we came to understand as SPIRE. So now with that in mind, I'm giving it all over to the design team, to Tommy.
Hi, everyone. So, being with Tal for so many years, I happen to know the material somewhat. However, Tal was very specific about creating these 5 pillars for us to work around. And the SPIRE concept, I'm not sure you were introduced this before, so the spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional, we realized will be the pillars of the building. And then again, the challenge was how do we turn these concepts into concrete? As Nir said, many buildings look great. Many buildings have amazing amenities. However, one of the issues is that people don't connect. In high-risers, people are kind of alienated, don't really know each other. So with the material that Tal provided us, we realized that the human element is the number one element. Feeling connected, feeling part of the community, feeling that you can contribute to the community, really enhances well-being and makes one feel at home. And now the challenge is, how do we do it in a building? How do we turn those software ideas into hardware elements in the building? We started looking at how do people behave in buildings, and the most awkward place in a building is probably the elevator. How many of you have been in an elevator before? How many of you live in a high-rise building or over? Great. How many of you know the personal names of maybe more than 5 or 10 neighbors and are actually friends with them and go out with them? Good, not too bad.
It's a happy crowd.
It is a happy crowd. There you go. So the other thing we realize is that people are posting their private lives all over social media, feeling very comfortable exposing many, many intimate details, but the neighbor right there, either on their floor or right, above or below, have no clue of even what their name is. We've all said to people in the elevator, have a nice day. We all said, have a nice evening. We all said, oh, what a cute dog. But people feel maybe shy or awkward about, taking it a step further. So the elevator being this very crucial point of going up and down for a very short time with people, we thought could be one of, as a design element, one of the places where people will feel more comfortable to share and talk. And the way we do it is we developed an app, or we are developing an app, which will share content that the residents will put. It will share it on the walls in the building, in the elevator, on the amenity levels and stuff like that. So I don't want to be too long here. Again, we have amenities like many, many other buildings do, and some amenities such as community gardening and community kitchen are also part of it. But I think the major thing is getting the people to start conversations, stepping outside their rectangles, outside their smartphones, outside of their units, coming together in the amenity floors, reaching out to the community, inviting the external community into the building. One of the things in happiness is rituals. We would like to hold rituals in the event, and a ritual can't be like, 2 events a year. It's something that needs to keep reoccurring. We are going to encourage the neighbors to form groups, maybe running groups or a book club or a cinema night or whatever. So it's really about starting to get people connected. The buildings are a very, very good resource for creating a community. It's all there. You have the building, you have the people, and now you just start motivating it, making it happen. And for that, we have the major architect.
No. Well, thank you. I guess that's me.
That is you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Oops.
Yeah.
I go up here. My name's Jose Merguido, and I'm a vice president of Siskovich Architects. And I also had a call from NIR. The project that we started working on has several of them had school components in them. And our office's background is very, very strong in school. In fact, we're doing the phase 2 of the dorms here on this campus. So you're going to get your own very happy building in the very near future. But what got me interested in basically the positive psychological aspects of happy is my involvement in mostly K-12 education. And we've had the good fortune of working on over 400 schools. And you meet the most interesting people when you happen to be working on schools. And a lot of them happen to be children. And that is, actually, you learn so much from them, not only from going to school. And one of the things are the young children. And that became a learning opportunity for me personally, because I realized that the younger they were, the 4- and 5-year-olds especially, they're factory wired for happiness. They are just, that's what they're about. They're ambitious, they're creative, they're inquisitive, all you got to do is walk by any primary school and listen to the schoolyard, and that's the sound of happiness. And one of the things that always puzzled me is what happens to the child as the child grows up and they graduate from grade to grade. And there seems to be almost an inverse relationship between the degree of happiness and academics. And the further along they get along, it seems like the shallower, more faint, the laughter and those feelings. But I'm also a large employer in this community. We have offices in Miami, New York, a number of places. We hire hundreds of people. And what's interesting is, when you finally get out of the university and enter the job market, one of the things we realize is one of the most important things that an employer looks for are the same characteristics that those young kids had. You need curiosity, you need inquisitiveness, you need what we started calling a state of play. Your mind has to be in a state of play. And if you're in a state of play, then you could have basically some structure to give your happiness a reference. So what we do in our architecture is we try to create places that could cultivate the state of play, and thereby creating elevators that are enriching experiences, or lobbies that add value, get to know your neighbors. So we're having a great time doing that, and we're looking forward to bringing a state of play to South Florida, as well as to this campus later on.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Isaac Prileltensky. I work here at the University of Miami. I'm a community psychologist. And as of late, I've been very interested in integrative happiness and well-being, which is why I'm so interested in this project. Because happiness takes place within yourself, in relationships, at work, in your building, in your community. And I think our challenge is to integrate all these aspects of our lives so that we could live happier, more fulfilling lives. And just to quote myself from the other day, if you were here, I think it's really important for human beings to feel valued and have an opportunity to add value. And isn't this a wonderful place to practice this just where you live? And we can feel valued in many ways by volunteering in your building to tutor kids. If you're good at math, you can tutor your neighbor's kids. And if you are good with the computer, you can help your neighbors with IT needs. There are many ways to feel valued. So I think our challenge is to practice our strengths right where we live. And I think we have an amazing opportunity here to create norms, right? We human beings, for the most part, not in Miami, but for the most part, we follow rules. And we follow norms. And if we create in this building and in the community an expectation, a norm that you need to volunteer in this community. You have strengths, everybody has strengths. We can do an inventory of strengths of the neighbors and then give people an opportunity, a role to feel valued by adding value, by making a contribution. You can babysit, you can get the newspaper for your elderly neighbor. There are many things you can do. And by adding value, but by making a difference to your neighbors, you feel better. This is a theme that you have heard in this conference many times, that one of the best ways to feel happy is to make somebody else happy. So I think our opportunity here is to create norms and expectations that you are going to come to this community, this neighborhood, this building, and you will be expected to do something. Think about it for a moment. Most buildings have a condo association. And usually what they do, they look at what needs to be fixed, you know, the sidewalk or the plumbing or the elevator is not working. Why couldn't we have an association for happiness and well-being? It's not just association about paying the bills, looking at the budget, and contesting some bylaws, right? So I think the challenge is to create norms, rules, expectations that you will be doing something for other people, and then I think it's contagious. When you see your neighbors volunteering and doing something for their neighbors, then more people want to do it, and then we engage in a very nice self-reinforcing cycle. So for me, it's a great opportunity to practice and learn and study integrative happiness and well-being. And with that, I will turn it to the better Dr. Prilaltensky.
Thank you. So I'm Oram Prilaltensky. I'm a counseling psychologist by training. I was on faculty here at the University of Miami for many years. I've been interested in well-being, happiness, flourishing for a number of years. I've taught courses in it, and we have created interventions to promote well-being. And since we know that relationships are the number one component, the number one factor that determines our happiness and well-being, that is certainly the case for me. When I heard about this project and I thought about what I think is most missing in most buildings, in most of the places where we live, it's that sense of connection. And, you know, it's a thing that we know how to do on college campuses. We know how to do these things really well. Think about student retention, right? College campuses know that to retain students, what we need to do is to get them connected. For them to have a sense of belonging and a sense of connection to other people and being able to find meaning here and create something bigger than themselves. We do this on college campuses and it works. And then people go and live in buildings. And we stand there or sit there in elevators And really, other than saying, have a nice day, we don't exchange anything. We don't, feel valued or add value at all to the people around us. So I was particularly excited to join this project. I just want to say another few words about, I also have an interest as a person with a mobility impairment in disability and happiness, because I believe that happiness and well-being is everyone's birthright. That's not to say that there aren't challenges, but we also know from this conference that you can have struggles and be well and be happy, that you can face crisis and flourish. So I think this is something we all need to work on. And I also believe that any building, any project, any kind of community intervention that you're creating, I think that by including everyone, those with and without disabilities, I think contributes to everyone's well-being. So I think that this is something that everyone can benefit from.
So it started in January 2018. Let me fast forward 3 months. Around March, beginning of April of 2018, Nir Shoshani said to me, Tal, we need to take this idea beyond a happier building. We want to create a happier community that will then go further to a happier city and a happier world. And just as 3 months earlier, I said, well, Nir, I know happier, I don't know building. I said, Nir, this is a bit big, and what we need are more people, more experts to help us realize this vision, this dream. And we started putting together a committee, a group of people. The group of people, 6 of them are sitting here. In addition, there are experts in the world of business, in the world of education, and we got together on a regular basis to discuss the future of the building, community, city, world. And what I'd like to do now, before opening it up for your questions, is to ask each one of the participants here who have been and are in this group of people, of visionaries, what their vision is for the future of this project, beyond this project of a happier building.
So I think you just told mine, but then you ruined my whole pitch here.
I thought it was so good I had to say it, sorry.
But yes, I think that the idea, I wouldn't go as far as the world. I wouldn't go too far. What I would do is look at Miami, which is our city. I would look at the World Happiness Summit, which made Miami its home 3 years ago. I would look at the dire straits of teen suicide that we've been living the last 10 years. And I would try and put together a concept. And that concept had not only residential living, but had also an educational element to it. In a conversation with the Miami-Dade School Board, we tried to pitch the positive education angle. And we found that there is not one school in South Florida which has a positive education element to it. And that's really where it all starts. Residential living is fine. We all live in houses. It's part of it. But it doesn't start there. It starts, as Jose said, in education. And the idea was to try and find a place where people study, send their children, go have a cup of coffee, and form a beacon for a community, for a happier community which integrates the elements of education and residence. That was the vision. That still is the vision. We've been working with the city. It hasn't been easy. I know that the World Happiness Summit has been trying to work with the city as well. That hasn't been easy as well. I'm pitching to the choir here. Everybody here in this room wants and understands and knows happiness probably much more than I do. The idea is to step into the 99% and not into the 1%. What happens to a nurse, police officer, emergency employee when they step into this world of happiness? What happens when they send their child to a positive education school? The child comes back with elements that he brings, and the police officer goes out to the street and he influences 100 people a day at least with what he brought from home. What happens to a city when it starts spreading in that sort of way, when the residential living is not geared towards only happier people, but also towards workforce and civil servants? So that's the vision, that's the idea, that's the concept that sort of we've been playing with.
I think to continue on Nir's point, and going back to something that I've said before, again, it's about people. It's about human beings. It's not about fancy buildings. It's not about unbelievable architecture, though I'm crazy about unbelievable architecture. At the end of the day, it's about how we impact people and how people impact us, how much involvement we have with the people surrounding us, the understanding that you don't need to, first of all, that you can ask for help. One of the things we found is, many of the daily elements of our lives are supported by paying other people to do things, right? You have a dog walker or a babysitter or whatever. I think in a community that is connected and is codependent on each other, you can ask for help. You don't need to pay for every little thing that you need to do. Coming from Israel, if you've heard of the concept of a kibbutz is a community life. It was based on different elements. We are in a capitalistic environment here in the US, but that doesn't negate the fact that the social element should be back into the center of things. I think it will make people feel a lot less lonely, because again, you could live in a very gorgeous home, you could have a ton of money, you could be very successful and yet feel super lonely. So this idea of community, the idea of connectivity, we are now in a world that everything is connected. But maybe sometimes we feel that nothing is connected. We feel so distant from each other. We are living in a digital era. So I would love to see how we take the digital and bring it back to the realm of the human and not stay, just in this virtual world of emojis and likes and whatever. That's where I'm hoping. I'm a very big believer in the ripple effect. I am a very big believer that if we start just choose a point, you talk about the Archimedecal point?
The leverage Archimedean point.
Right. This is the point of leverage, and we start there, and I really do believe that it would spread around.
I agree. My thinking is from a total person perspective, and again, I go back to the work that we do in learning. And a lot of times there is a thinking of, primarily in educational environments, of dealing with the head up, and we forget the rest of the human being. So the thinking, from my perspective, is to look at people in their totality and the emotional and spiritual intelligence that we all need to have. So the state of play that I mentioned before, I think is something that becomes a device that provides for participation, that provides for those kind of skills that you don't test for, but you certainly look for in other people. So if I had to summarize it, I would say I'd like to create environments that cultivate and sustain the state of play, for people to surround themselves for those that they care most about, in a game of life that is of an indefinite duration. And if we look at it in that long horizon, we tend to be a little more generous with each other, and a little more accepting of each other. So those are the kind of environments that we'd like to create for the collective benefit of all of us. So that's what we're trying to work together on, and as well as with the doctors here. They're helping us create that community in the buildings that we're creating and the communities that we're creating.
So I'm interested in creating opportunities for people to flourish through education, research, and practice. This is an amazing opportunity to practice what we preach to our students at the university. So I see this as a prototype. If we can get this right, and there will be mistakes and missteps, but the important thing is what are the lessons learned from this experiment. And nothing can advance in society without failing, without experimenting. So I really believe that you should never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world, because it's the only thing that ever has changed the world, to quote Margaret Mead. So as a professor, as a community psychologist, I'm very interested in creating educational programs for integrative happiness and well-being. And by the way, we're in the advanced stages of launching a new master's program here at the University of Miami with Tal's help and a few other great colleagues, Gail Ironson, whom you saw here, and a few other colleagues, a master's in integrative happiness and well-being. So I like to create new programs. I like to create new communities. And I think this is an amazing opportunity for us to learn. I just love to learn and to see what works, what doesn't, what's not working, how can we make it better. It will take a few years, but eventually the lessons learned will be applied in other communities, and they will be able then to bring it to scale. This is what everybody's trying to do here. We're trying to improve our own well-being so that all of us can become agents of change to improve the lives of everybody. And I think this is what this team is trying to do. Let's get it right for this community. It will take some time, but eventually we're in the business of creating agents of change for happiness and well-being. So that's my vision.
So my vision is, and this is kind of what I'm predicting, is that even though this is we will have to learn, and you also learn by making mistakes along the way, and there are always some mistakes to be made. My sense is that this will catch on very quickly, and that the larger community will look at this and think, well, of course. I mean, didn't we always know what's kind of missing? We need a sense of play. So as I said, we need to connect. We need to have a sense of meaning and purpose, and this provides a wonderful opportunity for us to do that. So I don't want to take any more time, because I think we want to open this up a little bit. My sense, I would just love to see how this is going to pan out, what we will learn, and again, how how the entire community can benefit as a result.
So last time Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar was on the stage, I had to cut off questions, and that was not so fun to do. I think we have probably time for 2 questions. What I'd like to ask is that you ask the question without the story, so that we can get through as much as possible. Tal, you pick. Where are we going? I pick? Okay. Let's
Anyone.
see.
Thank you for making me healthy. I feel that my mental health now has been established. Thank you, Tal, for being my teacher.
Wow.
Thank you for being good role models for the future generations. I don't have a question. I just want to be part. I just want to be part of what you're doing because I founded a center in Naples, Florida that is living what you're preaching. It's living. In 10 years, I am a successful community leader and I must be part of this process. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. In your group, do you have a biologist or environmentalist who's gonna, since everything is integrated, and we know about the global warming and everything about recycling in the sun energy, and when you're building this project, only in the building in the city, do you have that? I'm sure you have it, but it's in part of, because you didn't mention anything about it, about the ecological part.
But the stage isn't large enough for the size of the team that we have on this. There's a lot of other people that were part of this team, as Nair had mentioned. The technical side of it, that includes the sustainable approach, the wellness approach, the engineers, biologists, and a number of other professionals, really work within the conceptual or philosophical framework that we're creating. They provide input for it, but it is within a philosophical framework. So those help inform it, but what we're talking about here is really setting a course, a vision that kind of creates the direction that we're going in, and then the rest of the team helps
Phase
create.
1 and Phase 2.
Yeah.
We're still at Phase 1. Phase 2 will definitely take that into consideration. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
if
We're looking for volunteers.
No, there's a volunteer.
and if I can add to that, so we're introducing the SPIRE concept: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. And one of the basic ideas around this is the interconnectedness of all things. Whether it's the SPIRE elements, whether it's the individual and the group, the connection, and part of that is also connection to the environment, the world we live in and the world we create within. So we're looking without the world and within the world. So absolutely.
I have a question. What age group, what demographic are you looking to live in this building?
0 to 120.
There you go. Good answer.
You know, it's, if you'd asked this question before 1998, I would have said, well, mostly for the young ones, because you can't teach old dogs new tricks. But 1998, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis came into the scene, showing that we can change, and we do change, literally until the day we die. So 0 to 120.
I'm the old dog.
So my question is about the spiritual. I wonder how you are integrating that into the sense of building and community, because the word light in the "let there be light" actually has the etymology of cheerfulness or happiness. So it's an essential building block of creation. So actually, happiness chose us in the beginning.
I have nothing smart to say there.
Isaac, you want to?
Well, I think in terms of spirituality, I have met at this conference people for whom spirituality means very different things. But I think a key challenge is to create an environment where different types of spiritualities can flourish. This is exactly, this is our goal, to create an environment where we can be honestly, truly, authentically respectful of the many different ways in which people define meaning in their lives. So I think we're all of one mind in this pursuit.
Definitely.
Thank you. There are so many questions, and I am so sorry we don't have time, but in order to carry on with the agenda and respect everyone's time, we will have to move on. Please find them and ask them these questions, because it is such an inspiring and exciting new development in the world of happiness. Thank you all for your time.